Hi, I'm Mr. Balzer, and this is how to build a fire. Alright, so you're going to want to bring in your wood. We have our wood stored on our balcony here. You can see because of the snowstorm it's a little snowy, but we're going to just bring in a few pieces of wood so that it's all ready to go once you got your fire burning. You don't want to have to come outside and grab wood all the time. You can see we have some wood that we've previously brought in so that it's nice and dry, not cold and full of snow and wet. So that's the wood we're going to use to start the fire. Okay, so we want to make sure the fireplace is ready to build your fire. So for this step, you're going to need a plastic bag and a little shovel or something like that. So we're just going to take out this piece here, which the wood sits on. We'll just set it aside. And you want to shovel out all the ash. Make sure that it's nice and clean inside the fireplace. Typically, I like to just pile all the ash together. Make sure it's in a nice big clump. That way it's easier to shovel. So we'll bring it all together. And depending how often you have your fires, you might not need to do this every fire. But I find that it's a lot easier to start the fire when there's no ash inside. So there we got a nice little pile of ash. Shovel that up there. And we're going to put it inside of our Superstore plastic bag. Okay, so you got some ash in the bag there. And you want to get as much of it out of there as you can. You don't need to get it all out, but the cleaner, the better. And there we go. That's the last of it. Throw her in the bag. Now this is the most important step as far as the bag goes. You're going to want to make sure there's no holes in the bag because ash can fall out. And when you tie it up, you want to make sure it's tied up really nice and tight. Whether you decide to throw it in your household garbage or throw it outside for later, this ash can be quite a mess. I mean, you can see my hands are already getting all black. That's just part of the gig. Alright, so now we're going to be ready to start the fire, so we'll put this back in there. You want to put it right back towards the back end of the fireplace. And you just take a few pieces of paper, and you're just going to crumple them up into little balls, and just place it on the holder there. You want to make sure that you don't put in flat pieces of paper because they won't burn very well, especially if you put a big pile in. So you want to just crumple up a few pieces. Now you also don't need too many because the paper isn't what's going to actually ignite the wood. We're going to use some fire starting wood. So we'll just put this paper around here and just make sure that you have enough to get a good fire going. So maybe a couple more and we should be totally set to go. So something like that is perfectly fine. Alright, so here we have some starter barnwood. Some people might refer to this as kindling, but that really isn't accurate because kindling is more for bonfires where you're going to use like sticks and twigs. But this wood is nice, light, dry, old barnwood. And what's really nice about it is it's not dense. So it can burn pretty easily, whereas the logs you're going to put on the fire are quite dense, and that's why they don't catch easily. So we use this fire starting wood, I like to call it. And what you're going to want to do is place this fire starting wood over top of the paper, but you want to make sure you're going to build almost a TP type structure to make sure that there's some oxygen flow because, as we all know, fire needs oxygen to burn. We're going to set this up, you know, like a little structure like this. Now typically I like to use about 3 to 4 pieces of the fire starting wood. I just find that you don't want to use too much because you don't want to waste the fire starting wood, but you also don't want to use too little because you want to make sure that your fire gets going. So I'll use 5 pieces this time. Some of these pieces are a little bigger than others. The bigger the piece, the bigger the initial flame you're going to get. So we build something like that. That should serve us well. Okay, so now we're gonna get the meat and potatoes of the fire ready to go here. So one thing to keep in mind is that you want to use wood that's dry. So see, this wood still has some snow left over on it. It's very cold and wet. This isn't the type of wood you want to use to start the fire. You want to use wood that's nice and dry and also smaller pieces. If you throw a big old log on there, it's not gonna light. So we actually have some older pieces of wood that didn't quite fully burn through on our last fire. So I'm gonna throw those in there. These ones are always nice because they're nice and small pieces. And if you kind of deteriorate your TP structure, that's okay. So here we got another slightly burnt piece of wood. Toss that guy right on top. And again, something very important here is you want to make sure that you keep that air room underneath, because we need oxygen for the fire to burn as well. If you have some of these bark pieces, they burn really nicely, so you might want to slide those in there. And maybe we'll throw one smaller piece. So you can see I'm using, you know, a small piece of wood as compared to a big piece of wood. So there we go. Everything is set up now, and all we have left to do is start the fire. Alright, so I got my nice lighter here, barbecue lighter. We're ready to start the fire. But there is one very important thing we must remember. There is one very important thing we must remember. Fireplaces have a latch here that can open and close the chimney. And if it's closed, the smoke wants to go up, but it can't go up the chimney. It will come into your house, or in our case, our condo. And the fire alarm will go off. You don't want that to happen. There's a little latch in here. You can use your finger, you can use something long. All you want to do, and you'll hear it clang, you just want to slide this open here, and here we go. So that opens the chute at the top of the fireplace. Now we can get in here and safely light the fire. So you'll want to light a few pieces of the paper, but there's no reason to go all over the place lighting everything. So as long as you get the paper going, then it will eventually spread to the fire starter wood. It's lit! And everything will ignite. It's lit! It's lit! It's lit! It's lit! It's lit! It's lit! Yeah, and I mean, you can hear it going and crackling now. So we'll just let science do its work. Fire really is quite something, eh? Just beautiful. Now, here's a poker that we like to use for the fire. You can always readjust everything if you need to make sure that it's in the best possible position to light. So, you know, if you have some of these fire starter pieces that start to get out of place, you can position them nicely so that it's in a good position to start burning. One important thing to remember is to not fool around with this too much, because if you start to mess everything around, it may actually put out the fire before it starts. And in this process as well, if you see that all the paper starts to burn out and you'd like a little bit more flame to get everything started, you can always grab an extra piece of paper, crumple her up, and get it in a good spot to burn nicely, just kind of like that. Make sure you don't leave your hand in the flame for too long. Everything's looking pretty nice. It's lit! So as you can see, the fire's going nicely here. Once things start to burn, you might want to readjust to get some nice bigger flames going. And again, you don't want to readjust too much. So here we're just going to get some of these logs to go in some areas where there's a little bit bigger flames, and that way you can get a nice bigger flame going with these logs here. And of course, once things start to die down a little more, you can always add on more logs and get that fire going stronger. So here we go. This should be all right for now. All right, so the last thing that you need to do is make sure that these doors are closed. There is the potential for sparks to come flying out of the fire. You don't want them to land on the carpet and burn holes or anything else. So make sure that these doors are closed. They will get hot once you leave them closed, so you may need to use some sort of tool to open them up as so, like this. There you go. So once your fire is ready, you can enjoy it with your foodies. Yeah. Good boy. Good enough. Good big fire now.
That's a nice fire.
Loki, tell everybody how much you like the fire. Speak! Good boy! It's lit!